This better be good. I was teaching high school Russian history classes in the mid-1980s and the late 80s, which was a pretty heady time to be doing that with everything that was happening. Gorbachev had become the general secretary of the Soviet Union, I think, in 1985, and Chernobyl blew up in April of '86. And the Berlin Wall was still 3 years away from being torn down, but words like perestroika and glasnost were, everybody was talking about them. And these kids that I had in this class, we were doing the traditional Russian history class, but things started to unravel, and it got to be a lot of fun to be a teacher, and a lot of interested conversations we had with the kiddos. So the school I was teaching at had sort of a scheduling feature that was cool. There was a 2-week interim between semesters every January. And teachers could either teach a non-traditional class like bicycle repair or quilting or bookbinding, but there was an option that teachers could take kids on a curricular connected trip somewhere. So inevitably, at the end of January, all the French and Spanish teachers would come back deeply tanned, having spent 2 weeks on the beaches of the Caribbean or the Mediterranean with their kids doing conjugations in the sand. I don't know what they were doing. But it was different for a Russian history teacher. Who in their right mind would want to go to the Soviet Union in January, So I poked around. I had always wanted to go to Russia, and I poked around, and I found a travel company in Sweden that offered low-budget tours to places like Paris and London and the Soviet Union. And so I got together with another teacher friend of mine, and we wrote up a proposal. This was like in late 1985. And we submitted it to the school, and they said, sure, go for it. So we had no idea if anybody at all would be interested in this. And turns out we got 24 kids. Now, I don't know whether some of those parents just wanted the kids out of the house for 2 weeks, but we got 24 exactly kids, and we got 3 parent chaperones, and this other teacher and myself. So we had 29 people. And we landed in Moscow in the middle of January, and it must have been 25 below zero. It was unbelievable. And we met our guide, Yuri, who was this official. He was a really nice guy. He spoke better English than some of the kids. But he was our minder. He was with us 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And the next morning, when we had our first meeting with everybody, he laid it out. He said, this is a highly structured trip. There's going to be no free time per se. There's no shopping. We go to the usual state-approved sites. And the kids are all going, oh, okay, let's do that. So the first day, we go to Lenin's tomb. We go to the tombs of the czars. We go to the tomb of the unknown. We go to Khrushchev's grave. And we go to Stalin's grave. And that was sort of set the tone for the... The kids were great. The kids were curious. They were enthusiastic. They were almost always on time. There was only one major glitch in the whole trip, and her name was Mardell. And Mardell was one of the parent chaperones. She was constantly surprising herself by how unhappy she was. She shared all of these shortcomings incessantly in front of her own daughter, in front of all these kids. She complained about the hotel. The hotel was modest, I'll give her that. The first night there, I got my key stuck in the door. This is true. I turned it, nothing happened. I yanked on it, and the door came off the frame. It was modest, yeah. She complained about the food, and to be fair, the food was awful. But when she sent her dinner back to the kitchen one night, in front of her daughter, in front of all of us, that did not move the needle of detente significantly, She complained about the lack of free time. She complained about the lack of shopping. She complained about Yuri, our guide. And my favorite part was she complained about the weather. She apparently had not read the fine print. She had not read the large print. So the kids started, by about the third day, the kids are calling her Mardell. Mardell said this. Did you hear what Mardell said? And on the fourth day, Yuri, our good-natured guide, called all the adults together, and he said, tomorrow night we're all going to go up to St. Petersburg on an overnight train that leaves at 12:01 midnight. And I said, oh, geez, we won't be able to see anything. And he goes, well, that's the point. The government doesn't want you taking pictures of infrastructure, like mailboxes. I don't know what that was. But he said the good news is your group will all be in the same sleeping car. And there'll be 8 sleeping compartments, and each compartment has 2 pairs of bunk beds. So 4 people to a room. And we did have a balance of male, female, boys, and girls, so that was all right. And then Mardell remembered that the guy had said 8, and there were 29 of us. If we filled up 7 rooms, that's 28, and she volunteered to be the, well, no one objected. And so the next night we took 6 taxi cabs to get out of the cabs. It's freezing. We're at the Moscow train station. And we're all kind of huddled in how elephants protect themselves when it's cold or something? We're all in this big circle, and we're stomping our feet and rubbing our hands together to try to stay warm. And the sleeping car is right here, but we can't get in it yet. And finally we see this rather generously proportioned conductress walk across the window, and she's going to come over and unlock the door for us. Well, guess who has elbowed her way to the front of the queue at this point? And so the woman comes down and she unlocks the door, and Mardell goes hopping up the steps, first one, and then turns and does her little turkey trot all the way down to the far end of the car, and she stakes out room number 8 for herself. And she stands there with her arms crossed with this icy kind of glare as everybody else gets on with their bags and their backpacks. And we're filling up the car, and kids are excited. It's late at night, and the lights suddenly flicker, and there's a little jolt, and the train starts to move. And I figure, oh, we're on our way. And then there's this enormous pounding on the outside of the train car, like bam, bam, bam. And there's these loud male voices coming from the vicinity of the pounding. And I look out the window, and there's these 3 guys, probably in their mid-30s, and they're all bundled up in their parkas, and they've got their little Russian fur caps on, and they're smoking, and they're laughing, and they're pounding on the side of the car, the door. And so our conductress goes over to the door again, and the lights come back on, and the train is not moving, obviously. And she opens up the door, and these 3 guys come up into our compartment. And so the conductress looks at their ticket, and she goes like this. And she starts walking down the length of the sleeping car. And they go, the kids are all, their luggage is everywhere. The kids are still kind of moving in. And they move down, and they're slowly getting closer and closer. And when they get to number 8, the conductress she looks again at the ticket, points at the door. The expression on Mardell's face it ricocheted from this icy, steely, self-confident stare into full-blown muscular skeletal alarm as she realizes what's happening. And the first guy, he doesn't know who Mardell is, He picks up his lunch pail and his little duffel bag, and he nods at her, and he just goes into the door. And the conductress starts walking away. She's done. And she goes into the next car, I guess. I never saw her again. And the second guy picks up his stuff, and he turns to us, because we're all watching this. And he basically does the same thing. He gives a little nod to Mardell, and he goes in. And before the third guy can do anything, there's this loud voice from one of our students in the back of the train car named Andrew, and he goes, "You go, Mardell!" So the third guy takes a cigarette out of his mouth, drops it on the carpet, and just puts it out with his boot, still got snow all over it. And he does the same thing, and he goes in, and Mardell is just like, and I think she sent the Soviet record for going from the 5 stages of grief from, what is it, denial to anger to bargaining to depression to acceptance, right? And that all took like 3.8 seconds. And she was just out of things to complain about because the conductress was gone. The 7 rooms were all filled with our people. And the only bunk left was with the 3 amigos. And so she just put on this little half smile of surrender and resignation and turned and went into the room with a little farewell wave and to join her 3 roommates for the 7.5-hour overnight train ride in a room that was about the size of a small private elevator, And as the door closed, I thought to myself, this could be the highlight of the trip. We're not even in St. Petersburg yet. Thank you.